Okay, let's talk about ethics in psychology. So you've probably heard this word as something ethical, meaning like, is it morally right? So we're going to talk about, so psychology is supposed to be a science, and we want it to be replicated, and we already talked about how we want to be able to measure things. But there's some interesting things in psychology because we're talking about people that make some of the experiments unethical. Okay, so some of the classic experiments that we'll talk about in this class are experiments that we actually can't repeat again because they've been deemed unethical by the American Association of Psychology, and we'll talk about that association a little bit later. So here's a classic example. So Stanley Schachter in 1959, this is so interesting to me, he wanted to do a study on anxiety and affiliation, meaning who you will affiliate with. So what he did is he took a group of women and he told them that they were going to be electrically shocked. Okay, so he manipulated this in an interesting way. So he led the people to believe that some of the shocks would be very harmful. Okay, and they were going to measure the participants were told to be measuring their heart rate and their blood pressure while they were being shocked. So half of the group was warned that the shocks would be very painful. All right, so they had different groups. So one group thought that they'd have very painful shocks. And that's what they deemed these were people that were going to be high anxiety because they were nervous about these really painful shocks coming. Okay, the other half of the subjects was considered the low anxiety group. And they were told that the shocks would be painful, but very mild. I'm sorry, painless and very mild. So one group, you're going to have really painful shocks. And the other group, you're going to have shocks. We're just going to be measuring your heart rate and your blood pressure, but they're not going to be painful, right? So he made half of the group feel very anxious. And then he gave all of these women the opportunity to wait with other people or wait by themselves. Okay, so that's what he was measuring. That was their affiliation. Is so you're going to wait for your experiment. Do you want to wait in this room by yourself or do you want to wait in a room of other people? And what he found out is the people that were considered high anxiety, so they're very nervous about these electric shocks, they were more likely to want to wait with other people. Versus the ones that were not going to be in pain, they didn't really care about being with someone else. And this is really where that coined phrase, misery loves company, came from. So he's saying that people that are really high anxiety, that are very needy, want to be with people, and people that are very comfortable and not anxious don't mind being by themselves. So I want you to think about that. I forgot to, let's go back a second. In reality, no one was receiving shocks. Okay, so they weren't really going to shock these people. They just made it seem like they were going to. So is that ethical? So how would you have felt if you were one of those people that was put in that really anxious situation, or led to believe that you were going to be shocked? How would that make you feel? Okay, so the question really is, should researchers, of people that look at these things, should they be allowed to represent or misrepresent the research? Lie to you is basically the question. Should a researcher be able to lie to you if it's for the sake of science? Okay, so that's where we're really going to talk about ethics and research. Placebo groups, I talked about that in the last one. A placebo group is a group that's not getting the medicine, but they think that they are. Okay, so it's not like you're just not getting a pill. A placebo group is someone that, like, we're going to test out this drug, and they're really getting a sugar pill. So they think they're getting an anti-depression pill, but they're really not. Is that ethical? Should that be allowed? Okay. So deception, right? So should deception be allowed in the scientific process? So it's pretty common before the 1960s, especially in psychology. There's some pretty messed up experiments that they did with people that we have learned a lot from. But like I said, they're not allowed to be replicated now because of these guidelines we have on ethical research, okay? So deception is used to reduce problems associated with the placebo effect that we just talked about. The placebo effect is you think you're getting something, but you really aren't. So deception, or lying or deceiving someone, we don't want people to think that they're not getting a pill, so we lie to them. All right, so that's the point of deception. It's not really meant to be mean. That's not the researcher's intent, is to be mean to their participants. They just want them to think that they're actually getting something, or that they think that they're going to be shocked, so that they're measuring their actual feelings, okay, so that they're not operating on a lie. So animal research, another big area of ethics. So we just deem something that's not ethical for humans, should that be ethical for animals? Okay, so do the same laws that apply to humans, do those apply to animals? We do a ton of scientific research on rats, right? That's why they called like a lab rat. to see the effects of drugs in the mind, of activity. And then these rats are, they're usually euthanized afterwards. So I took a couple upper division classes in college where we did experiments with rats and then killed those rats to look at the effects of their brain, all right? So we sometimes expose animals to those unthinkable situations that would not be okay for humans, but we deem them ethical for animals, all right? So there's been these guidelines that have been evolved because of these unethical things that have happened. So the picture, actually really quick, that you're looking at, the picture that you're seeing right here, this was a picture of a rhesus monkey, so a monkey that was removed from his mother at birth and then given a surrogate mother as kind of a replacement, so made of wire. And the research was conducted by Harry Harlow, we'll talk about him, and there's no way that we could perform that. So the point was trying to really get, like, does a surrogate mother have the same effect as a real mother? Could we do that with humans? Absolutely not. We couldn't take a baby and give them to a wire mother, but a lot was learned from this experiment with the monkey. They actually found out that no, monkeys don't just want the thing that's feeding them, they actually want contact, okay? Same thing with babies, like it's not just the food. So that was the kind of the basis behind the experiment, was that babies just like their mother because they are a food source, or animals just like their mothers because they are a food source. And that's what this experiment was getting at. It proved that the monkey didn't really like the wire mom that was giving him milk. He actually preferred an actual being, okay? So here are our guidelines, our current guidelines for ethical research. So currently now, so participation has to be voluntary. So you have to sign up for this research. You have to know that you're going into an experiment. I can't just go out in public and do research on people that don't know they're part of an experiment. There can be no exposure to harmful procedures, all right? So harmful is kind of a loose word, but that is what we use. So no exposure or being exposed to harmful procedures. If deception is used, so if there's lying going on during the experiment, a full explanation should follow the session. All right, so when you take psychology in college, you will actually have to sign up for psychology experiments. And the caveat or the rule is that you can be deceived, but after the research is done, they have to tell you what they did. Okay, so I was at an experiment one time where they were showing images over and over and over, and I was supposed to say like whether they made me happy or made me sad. And then after the experiment, they told me that there are subliminal messages in between each thing that I saw. And some pictures were like of the devil and some pictures were of angels. And they were looking at if subliminal messages did anything. So that was kind of disturbing. But they have to tell you it afterwards. All right, so that's basically the rule. Privacy should not be violated. So things that you sign off for privacy cannot go out to anyone else. And if harmful procedures are imposed on animals, must not be allowed. Okay, so harmful procedures imposed on animals must not be allowed. Things we do to animals we can't necessarily do to humans, okay? And then approval from host institutions is necessary. That means that if I'm a researcher who works for Harvard or UC Berkeley, I have to have approval from my institution, so they have to know. Basically, there needs to be someone watching over your experiment. Okay, so those are ethical guidelines, and we'll be looking at those again when we are looking back on experiments, talking about how they were unethical, and then how they currently do research for new experiments.